Nice little intro music.
Me too. Drewby did a really good job at making it.
Yeah, so I had made this like a year ago, and I kind of had it in reserve. People kept asking us for intro music, and I've always been the type to not be into intro music. I just want people to get to it. Like, I hate when people have like these 2-minute long intros. That's just the same thing every time. It will literally stop me from listening to a podcast just right off the bat. But people have been asking for it, so I tweaked this a little bit and put that in, and hopefully 20 seconds for those of you that are like me isn't that bad. But
yeah, my friend Cassie pointed out that a lot of times she feels as if when she starts ours that she accidentally started it in the middle of the episode, which definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I do get that.
So thank you, Cassie, because I like intro music.
Do you? Yeah,
yes.
Okay. I mean, sometimes I got to put my ego aside, but I in general don't listen to many podcasts because I think the standard podcast format is kind of garbage. But I mean, there's people that like it for whatever reason, so I guess I'll adjust to it.
Yeah, well, I think you did a really good job with it.
Oh no, I like the music too.
I'm glad you had that on tap because it fits pretty well.
Yeah, I like it too. I have a version with more kick drum in it, but I don't know. We might adjust it as time goes on. But
yeah, maybe add samples to it. Maybe who knows?
Yeah,
it's something nice to start with and then build off of.
Make it sound My Life with a Thrill Kill Cultish.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think of that. I definitely am looking forward to adjusting it or making it sound better, so leave us a comment and let us know what you think of it. But yeah,
I guess we go through a few housekeeping items to start before we get right into it. So
yeah, because we're covering Henry Lee Lucas today, right?
We really are.
Okay.
And this is going to end up probably being a 2 or 3 part series. We haven't done one of those in a really long time.
Yeah, we haven't. But let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Henry Lee Lucas, was there a Marilyn Manson member named after him?
So yes, I was going to ask you when he hopped onto your radar. And for me, he hopped onto my radar back when I was a middle school student getting into Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, Sarah Lee Lucas.
Yeah, Sarah Lee Lucas, who was the original drummer of Marilyn Manson, was kind of short-lived.
He's dead now, I believe.
No, that was Brian Putesky, so Daisy Berkowitz.
Okay. No, Daisy Berkowitz is still alive.
No, he is not. He died of colon cancer a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. Why am I confused Daisy Berkowitz with Twiggy Ramirez. Okay,
yeah. So Sarah Lee Lucas is still alive, was the original drummer, does some sort of industrial electronic stuff now.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that's when I first learned about Henry Lee Lucas.
Me as well, yes.
Because I always went through the Marilyn Manson members and I was like, who is this? Like Ginger Fish. I didn't know who Albert Fish was. I was just trying to figure out who that was.
I think a lot of people in our general age group, I'm talking people who are in our 30s now, particularly us who are, like me, not you, but in our late 30s into early 40s, really learned a lot about serial killers through early Angel Fire and GeoCities pages and getting introduced to them through the members of Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, I agree. And, I understand things more comprehensive now. You can fact check a lot easier, but man, I miss those Angel Fire pages.
Me too.
I mean, when we did the 3X murders, that was...
The most comprehensive information I found was on an Angel Fire page that was still up.
That was still up. God fucking bless. But anyway, so Henry Lee Lucas, he was an American serial killer whose crime spanned allegedly from 1960 to 1983, and I'm not just using allegedly tongue-in-cheek. You'll understand why in a bit. He was convicted of murdering 11 people, legit. That none of that was retracted. In the end, he was convicted of murdering 11 people. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and condemned to death for the murder of Deborah Jackson, although his sentence would be commuted to life in prison in 1998. He rose to infamy after confessing to more than 100 murders to the Texas Rangers and other law enforcement officials while in prison. I will get to this.
Yes.
Because I believe he only killed 2 or 3 people and shouldn't actually even be labeled as a serial killer.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Technically, I think serial killer is 3 people. So if
it is. That's why 3X murders were not considered serial killers. Because only 2 people were killed.
So in theory, he is a serial killer, but just barely.
Yeah.
He is serial killer adjacent.
Yes, he's serial killer adjacent. Shout out to my guitarist Brandon again, who when I used the term, I said I was carnivore adjacent at the show yesterday. He's just like, the word adjacent just is ruined because it reminds you.
That's
of the
literally
show.
why I just said it. I've been looking for like an angle to just throw the word adjacent out for Brandon, and I just did it.
It's not a Misery Machine episode unless we use the word adjacent or allegedly. But anyways, so yeah, I think that this is somebody who never would have reached notoriety unless he pulled the shit he did, and if there wasn't corruption within the Texas Rangers and all that shit, which you're going to find out here in a bit. But like, yeah, I very much resent like the fact that that he's labeled a serial killer. I really don't think he should be, but he's still a very interesting case. So an investigation by the Dallas Times-Herald newspaper later discredited many of Lucas's murder confessions, resulted in a follow-up investigation by the Attorney General of Texas. The investigation concluded that Lucas was a fabulist who had falsely confessed. Lucas himself recanted the confessions as a hoax, mostly when he, didn't get privileges anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the case resulted in a reevaluation of police techniques and greater awareness of false confessions. Investigators did not consider that the petty privileges like fancy steak dinners, milkshakes, TV privileges granted by the confession interviews, hence the term confession killer, would prompt further confessions. Investigators also allowed Lucas to see case files to refresh his memory, giving him access to knowledge only the perpetrators would know. He died of congestive heart failure in 2001.
So, yeah, like, I don't think those are petty privileges. Fancy steak dinners, especially if you're in Texas, delicious.
Yeah, or especially if you're in prison.
And they, like, kept him, like, stocked up in cigarettes.
Yeah, they were constantly feeding him cigarettes. It was crazy. Like, he was smoking all the time. That's not, like, if you're in prison, cigarettes are hard to get.
Yeah.
You usually gotta hoop that shit.
You do. And, as a former smoker and a current, like, nicotine addict.
She's holding a vape in her hand right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Shame her.
Shame me. I'll eventually stop again. Like, I went through some, like, stuff this summer, and unfortunately,
I'll eventually stop killing. Just right
re-addicted
now, I need
myself. But
who is that serial killer that stopped for like 30 years because he got a wife that he loved and started a family? Then his wife divorced him, and he just started killing again, and then like got caught almost immediately.
I don't know. Was it BTK? No, it wasn't.
No,
he did that while he was
Green River Killer.
I don't know. If anybody knows, let us know, because it's like escaping me right now.
Yeah, but anyways, so let's get into his early life because he's had some really fucked up nonsense happen to him.
Yeah, so Lucas was born on August 23rd, 1936 in a one-room log cabin in Blacksburg, Virginia. Lucas lost an eye at age 10 after it became infected due to a fight with his brother. I didn't know that was like a fake eye.
Yeah, it was a fake eye, and I can't remember. If I remember the details correctly, his brother like gouged his eye or some shit, and it just got infected. And yeah,
that's
he
interesting.
lost it. Yeah, his parents.
I thought it was just a lazy eye, but
no, it was fake. His parents were not very attentive, as you'll learn.
Yeah. So a friend later described him as a child who would often get attention by displaying frighteningly strange behavior. Lucas's mother, a prostitute, would force him to watch her and her clients make him cross-dress in public. She purportedly so she could later pimp him out to men and women alike. Eventually, his school teachers complained about the cross-dressing, and a court order put an end to it.
And he was also beaten when 8 years old with a wooden plank by his mom and put him in a coma for 3 weeks.
Yeah, so it's really like odd how, and I don't really mean odd, but how common that is for parents to do that to kids. We have like a local celebrity in town that like happened to him. And he's a very strange guy now, but very sweet. You know Jesse, right?
No, I don't.
So he is a local kind of personality around town. He wears like dresses. He like cross dresses. He's not like trans or anything like that, but he does like wear dresses. And I wouldn't say he's mentally ill, but he definitely is different. He does some strange things.
Not saying that cross-dressing is strange.
No. He like one time almost died because he fell asleep in a dumpster.
Yeah.
And then the trash truck came.
Oof, yeah. No, I've never seen this part.
Yeah.
Like I'm more familiar with the homeless in Portland, but
Yeah.
I've never really seen any in Lewiston, Auburn. There's not many like homeless here.
Yeah, well,
because
he's
it's
not
hard to
homeless. He
survive.
does have a home.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't been out and about a lot because he's been hanging out at Denny's, and he went and crossed the street a couple years ago and got hit by a car.
Oh God.
But he does have like an apartment. But rumor has it his mother did things like that to him when he was
Yeah.
younger. Would like pimp him out to men and like force him to cross dress, and that's kind of like why he is as colorful as he is now. I don't know how much of it's true, how much of it's just like local lore. He is a very sweet man.
I
But
mean,
anyway.
I have heard things like that, even though like cross-dressing and being trans there's more of a stigma around it back then. It wasn't entirely uncommon to hear of, and it seems to be just mothers who would cross-dress their children forcibly or basically dress them up as girls and tell them and give them a girl's name and tell them they're a girl because they really wanted a girl. So yeah, that happened quite a bit back then. I think there's more scrutiny now, so you don't really hear of it as much. So, and not only was his mom like that, I think I may have read, I can't confirm this, but I think I read that she did sexually abuse him, and I'm not sure if, I know she wanted to pimp him out to men and women, but I'm not sure if he actually was pimped out. I don't know. I don't know. But those are things that I read are possible.
I know when he was a child, he was shown sexuality through bestiality on farm animals.
Was that him? I thought that was Ottis Toole.
It could have been both of them, but he like was shown to like fuck sheep and then kill them.
Damn, so that's some Peter Curtin shit.
It's some definitely Peter Curtin shit. So in December 1949, Lucas's alcoholic and bootlegger father, Anderson Lucas, died of hypothermia after going home drunk and collapsing outside during a blizzard. Shortly thereafter, while in 6th grade, Lucas dropped out of school and ran away from home, drifting around Virginia. Lucas claimed to have committed his first murder in 1951 when he strangled 17-year-old Laura Burnsley after she refused his sexual advances. He would have been about 15 years old at the time. As with most of his confessions, he later recanted this claim.
So I want to say that his father, I believe what I read, that his father was very physically abusive, and he basically was selling moonshine. He was an insane alcoholic and just let his mom do whatever she wanted with Henry Lee Lucas. But yeah, he'd beat the shit out of him. And then, yeah, he just died of hypothermia from collapsing drunk outside. So yeah. I don't know what happened to his mother.
I do.
Do you?
That's his first murder.
Oh.
That's his actual first murder.
Oh, yes, he does kill her.
Yeah.
That's right.
We're actually going to be like shortly getting to that.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So on June 10th, 1954, Lucas was convicted of over a dozen counts of burglary in and around Richmond, Virginia, and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He escaped in 1957, was recaptured 3 days later, and was subsequently released on September 2nd of 1959. In late 1959, Lucas traveled to Tecumseh, Michigan to live with his Tecumseh, Michigan, to live with his half-sister Opal. Around this time, Lucas was engaged to marry a pen pal with whom he had corresponded while incarcerated. When his mother visited him for Christmas, she disapproved of her son's fiancée and insisted he move back to Blacksburg. He refused, and they argued repeatedly during the visit about the upcoming nuptials.
Nuptials.
So this is when we get to the matricide.
Matricide. That's not when you kill a mattress, folks.
No, it's not. So on January 11th, 1960, in Tecumseh, Michigan, Lucas killed his mother during an argument regarding whether or not he should return home to her house to care for her as she grew older. I'm sure it had something to do with the wedding as well.
Oh, yeah. He claimed that she struck him over the head with a broom, at which point he stabbed her in the neck. Lucas fled the scene and subsequently said, "All I remember was slapping her alongside the neck." I'm glad you included this, or else I was going to mention it. All I remember was slapping her alongside the neck, but after I did that, I saw her fall and decided to grab her, but she fell to the floor, and when I went back to pick her up, I realized she was dead. Then I noticed I had a knife in my hand, and she had been cut.
I just happened to notice.
I slapped her with the flat of the blade and just happened to practically slash her throat open.
Right. So Opal returned later and discovered their mother alive but in a pool of blood. She called an ambulance, but it turned out to be too late to save Viola's life. Viola's the mother. Viola. The official police report stated she died of a heart attack precipitated by the assault.
Oh, not because your throat was cut open.
Well, yeah, if your throat was cut and it wasn't enough to really, if it was a slow bleed and then you had a heart attack, I imagine that would... I'm no cardiologist here.
I mean,
however.
I think that could cause like an embolus or a thrombus. I'm not sure the correct word, and that could hit your heart and cause a heart attack. Yeah.
So Lucas was arrested in Ohio on the outstanding Michigan warrant.
So then he claims to have killed his mother in self-defense. Maybe if he had gone over the treatment he got when he was little, it would have been, they would have been a bit lenient on him, as some people are when they kill their abusive parents. But his claim was rejected, and he was sentenced to 20 and 40 years in Michigan for second-degree murder. However, he served 10 years and was released in 1970 due to prison overcrowding.
Right.
So normally I'd be like, holy shit, what a miscarriage. But, did she really not deserve that?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't really feel too bad about that one.
I don't really feel bad when people kill their abusive parents.
Yeah. So he became a drifter at this point. Unfortunately, many people who get out of prison
become drifters because you can't really get hired.
You can't get hired. You can't get an apartment. You can't really.
That's why I really like the Scandinavian prison system and their system of justice, because it's really set more on rehabilitation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
And that's why I don't want to get too political here. They don't keep people in there forever. The longest you're going to be there is 15, 20 years. Then you're out. You're good to go.
They work to reintegrate you. You're being reformed and reintegrated, so that way you're and people who get out of prison rarely reoffend.
That's why they can do all of their socialist things that I approve of.
Whereas in America, the reoffense rate is what, 70% or something like that?
Constantly.
Depending on the crime.
In prison.
Well, and it's just because we have for-profit prisons.
Right.
There's some bigwig who is making ass loads of money off of
slavery, essentially.
Basically this is forced slavery. You're going to work jobs where you might make 70 cents a day, and the only reason people work these jobs is because you just don't want to sit in a cell all the time. So you're basically doing this for free. It's really sick, and we've let this go on for a very long time. And there's even people who are Democratic Democratic presidential candidates, fuck you, Kamala Harris, who, are responsible for things like that. So it's not really a left or right thing. It's more of a rich thing. But anyway,
it is.
I won't.
Yeah, so in 71, I think we need to have a separate episode for shit like this.
Maybe. I don't want to be too political and stuff like that, and it just whatever. Let's just keep going. I think a lot of people could agree with us that, the prison system's fucked, but anyways.
Yeah, so in 71, Lucas was convicted of attempting to kidnap 3 schoolgirls. While serving a 5-year sentence for the crime, he established a relationship with a family friend and single mother who had written to him.
Okay, say what you're going to say first.
You will see a lot of times throughout this, these women really, really like him and while in jail.
Yeah, well, he's not, younger pictures of him.
He's kind of handsome. Even with a droopy eye, he's not bad looking.
He's not unattractive. He really isn't. I mean, as he got older, he looked a bit creepier, but you could see why somebody would be okay.
And I think when the older him looking creepy is only because he's missing so many teeth.
Right, yeah. He basically looks like he's done a lot of meth. But so I want to just say something. So he served a 5-year sentence for the crime. Mm-hmm. He did 4 before for burglary, 10 for killing his mother. He has spent 19 years of his life in prison.
And this is not a very long time, so let's do some general math here.
Yeah.
So he's born in 36. This is now 71. He's not very old.
He's half of his life just about half of his life has been in prison. So so they married on his release in 1975, but he left the marriage 2 years later after his stepdaughter accused him of sexually abusing her. Lucas began moving between various relatives, and one got him a job in West Virginia, where he established a relationship that ended when his girlfriend's family confronted him about abuse. This is a theme with him. I think it was him that tried to tell during one of his confessions, and I don't know if this is real or not, that just every person he killed, he always raped the corpse after.
Yep.
I don't know if that's
true
or not, but it wouldn't surprise me given his penchant for sexual abuse in this stage of his life. So Lucas befriended Ottis Toole, and I might screw up and say Otis because a lot of people say Otis. It's spelled Ottis, and Yergy has told me that it is definitely Ottis.
It is.
And that Ottis has referred to himself as Ottis.
As
so
is Lucas has referred.
So at that point, then it's kind of like, okay, it's definitely Ottis. So you will hear a lot of people say Ottis Toole. So if I make that mistake, please don't crucify me. So after befriending Ottis Toole, they settled in Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville, Limp Bizkit, where he lived. Where he lived with Toole's parents and became close to his adolescent niece Frida Becky Powell, who had a mild intellectual impairment and had escaped from a juvenile detention center. A period of stability followed, with Lucas working as a roofer, fixing neighbors' cars, and scavenging scrap. What you didn't mention is that Ottis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas were kind of lovers in a way.
Yeah, I mentioned things like that a little bit more because I separated this off into like Henry Lee Lucas, mentioning Ottis Toole because it definitely is a big part of what's going on, but we do have like notes specifically for Ottis Toole where that's gone into more. But yeah, they had some sort of sexual relationship. I don't know that Lucas was gay, maybe more like heteroflexible at this point.
Yeah, but Ottis almost definitely was, though he did sexually abuse, what was it, female victims or like corpses and stuff like that. And I think that's just more because he got off on sexual abuse, but all in all, he seemed to identify as gay. I would also say, and this is why some documentaries about them are unwatchable, because they big them up as the serial killer duo who worked in tandem killing all these people. But as we'll probably get into, that probably didn't ever happen.
No, they basically would just sensationalize what they did, and Ottis had noticed Henry was getting famous from this, like all this bullshit he was spouting off, and then Ottis started like spouting off because he wanted to be famous too and thought he was being overshadowed by Lucas.
I mean, Henry was more charismatic than Ottis was better looking than Ottis was, and
I liked Ottis's voice.
Ottis does have a very
very delicate, beautiful voice.
Yes, he does.
He sounds like just like a Southern belle.
Yeah, if you just
that's the best way to like describe it.
If you closed your eyes and listened to him, like you would not think it was coming out of that man. But so Powell, Ottis Toole's niece, is that right?
Yes, it was her niece.
Was put into a state shelter by the authorities after her mother and grandmother died in 1982. I'm not sure how old she was at the time. Lucas convinced her to run away with him, and they lived on the road, eventually traveling to California, where an employer's wife asked them to work for her infirm mother, who was 82 years old. Her name was Kate Rich. Rich's family turned Lucas and Powell out, accusing them of failing to do their jobs and writing checks on Rich's account, very common then. While hitchhiking, they were picked up by the minister of a Stonebird, Texas religious commune called the House of Prayer. Believing Lucas and the 15-year-old Powell, okay, thank you, were a married couple, he found Lucas a job as a roofer while allowing the couple to stay in a small apartment on the commune. Powell had become argumentative and homesick for Florida, and Lucas said she left at a truck stop in Bowie, Texas. So around that period of time, like, is it still, like, acceptable to marry 15-year-olds?
I don't want to sit here and say it was ever acceptable.
I know we got a comment from 3X Murders saying, hello, in the 30s, of course it's okay to have sex in cars, and yeah, of course it's okay to marry 13-year-olds. I'm sorry I wasn't alive in the 30s, and I don't know why you think that's okay to talk about like that. But anyways, I don't know in 1982 if that's like an okay thing. Maybe it is in Texas. I don't know.
I was born in 83 and I didn't know any 15-year-olds. Well, I didn't know any 15-year-olds.
You didn't know anything then. You were just a little baby.
Just a little baby.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. Like I'm sure it wasn't that common. I did know of, when I was in high school, when I was like a sophomore, there was a girl who lived in the apartment below us who had like a Navy husband, who then I noticed was now at high school with me because she was a minor and hadn't completed high school.
Yeah.
So I did, know that was a thing. And I went to high school in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, at least that was still kind of happening then. I don't know how common or okay that was. It was definitely like a huge weird thing for me to see that because she was in my grade. But
I knew sixth graders dating seniors. I use that loosely because sometimes it was a secret. But I know that when I was in high school, which is more mid to somewhat late 2000s, I knew people like juniors and seniors, so anywhere from the age of 16 to 18 dating people in their mid-20s. and this was okay. Well, I should say it was always girls. It was always girls dating older guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was somewhat acceptable.
Right. I know, like, what you're saying is
But we
I don't
also
know if
come
it's
from
fine.
smaller areas. I should say we come from small towns.
We do come from small towns, and the town that I lived in was like a big like bedroom community for Navy families and BIW families, which is like a shipyard up here.
Whereas I went to school at a backwoods farming town where people like had guns on them, even in school, and yeah, just a lot of weird shit. People like there was a bunch of people living without heat and stuff like that, and some without plumbing, and yeah, just big farm community.
Yeah, where I lived, a place where it was all like the same ranch style house.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, I would assume you went to a better school than I did, but yes.
That's kind of, I don't know. I went to Lisbon. You went to Levitt. Levitt was kind of a better school, technically.
On paper, as far as academics, but you know what? That was what I tell people that happens there, and it doesn't happen now. I think I just had a really bad grade, but it was frighteningly bad. Sometimes the amount of drugs, the amount of violence, the amount of shit the teachers look the other way on. Yeah, but anyways.
So what I'd say before we get off this tangent is I don't think it's odd per se that we have like high school students dating, older men. What's odd about this is she's a 15-year-old, and at this point Henry Lee Lucas is in his late 40s.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that's where it becomes weird.
I don't know, I don't know culturally how that is in the South, especially at that time period. Maybe somebody who's like from Texas or from the South could like enlighten us a little bit, but
in previous centuries, even in the early 1900s, that was totally fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. You want to marry your young daughters off to, settled older men.
Yeah, and sometimes they get married off when they're like late single digit ages, early double digits. So, but anyways, not that I'm trying to normalize that, but okay. So in June 1983, he was arrested on charges of unlawful possession of a firearm by Texas Ranger Phil Ryan. Later, he confessed to the murders of Frida Powell and Kate Rich. Okay, so he did.
He did, and he pointed out where their bodies were. So.
Okay, yeah, he led them to the remains. Okay,
Yep.
Though forensic evidence alone was inconclusive and the coroner stopped short of positively identifying either set of remains, his participation in the investigation would serve to boost his credibility and later confessions to other crimes. Lucas later denied involvement, but the consensus agreed that he did murder Powell and Rich. So he basically killed his pseudo-boyfriend, Ottis Toole, his niece.
And yeah, he was, involved with Becky as well. At the same time here, I believe he definitively did kill them. They were, murdered. They were dismembered. He pointed out to where all the body parts were on the property.
And this was before they were feeding him the police reports and stuff like that. So it is most likely that he did do this.
Yeah, he had burned Becky in an oven. That's why it was harder to identify her, because it was just like bone fragments and stuff they had found.
Yeah.
He did admit to necrophilia with her. I do believe he killed his mother. He killed these two. I don't really buy anything else.
Well, what about the 17-year-old girl when he was 15?
I doubt it.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Like, that one I have to look into in conjunction to his false confession spree, because one, I don't know when he admitted to it. Two, I feel as if that would be something that he wouldn't have had a lot of information on, and I want to know what he said about it.
Right.
So I will say that I believe he killed the ones that you mentioned, but that one I am
we'll
on the fence about. Yeah.
We'll follow back up.
For sure.
So now we're getting into when he started to falsely confess to stuff. So in November 1983, Lucas was transferred to a jail in Williamson County, Texas. Lucas reported that he was roughly treated by inmates and attempted suicide. He claimed that police stripped him naked, denied him cigarettes and bedding, held him in a cold cell, tortured his genitalia, and did not allow him to contact an attorney.
So that may or may not have happened, because that has happened to people.
Absolutely.
So,
in interviews with law enforcement personnel, Lucas confessed to numerous additional unsolved killings. It was thought that there was a positive corroboration with Lucas's confessions in 28 unsolved murders. And so the Lucas Task Force was established by James B. Adams, the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety. So where this kind of started was when he was getting arraigned on the murders of Becky and Kate.
Rich, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, well, what are we going to do about all these other women that I killed?
Yeah. So he said this in court.
Yeah, he said this in court.
Like when he was getting convicted, and he's like, well, what about the other 100 women I killed? And just the court just erupted. So yeah, this is when this got bad, real bad.
Yeah. So the task force officially cleared 213 previously unsolved murders as a result of the confessions.
Yeah, and he also received preferential treatment rarely offered to convicts. So he was frequently being taken out of prison to go to restaurants and cafes for his participation in the murders, and he was rarely handcuffed. He's often allowed to wander the police stations and the jails at will, and he even knew codes for the security doors.
Yeah, he considered the Williamsburg jail his home.
Yeah, it was quite funny. So later attempts at discovering whether Lucas's involvement in his confessed crimes were complicated when it was discovered that he was given access to information of the files of the cases he was confessing to. So there were suggestions that the interview tapes showed that Lucas would read the reactions of those interviewing him and altered what he was saying, thereby making his confessions more consistent with facts known to law enforcement. The most serious allegation against investigators is that they had let Lucas read the case files on unsolved crimes and thus enabled him to come up with convincingly detailed confessions, which made it virtually impossible to determine if he had been telling the truth to the Lucas Task Force about a relatively large number of these murders.
Right.
So in 1983, he claimed to have killed an unidentified young woman who was later identified as Michelle Busha along Interstate 90 in Minnesota. So when questioned by police, he gave inconsistent details of the way he murdered the victim, and so therefore he was eliminated as a suspect. Then in 1984, he confessed to the murder of an unidentified girl who was discovered shot to death in a field in Caledonia, New York. I think I said that right?
Yeah, Caledonia. It's in upstate New York.
Caledonia? Okay. On November 10th, 1979. So the unidentified girl was referred to at the time as Caledonia Jane Doe. Investigators, however, found insufficient evidence to support the confession. So in early 2015, over 35 years later, and 14 years after his death, Caledonia Jane Doe was identified through a DNA match as Tammy Alexander. Lucas is also believed to have falsely confessed to the 1980 slaying of Carol Cole in Louisiana. Cole was unidentified until 2015. Another thing that I think should be mentioned, the ways in which, just how wacky the stuff he confessed. So somebody did out a map, and it was found that in order for him to have committed all these murders, he would have had to, because there was ones he was saying that he did in Texas and Louisiana, but he was also committing some in Washington and Oregon. And in order for him to commit some of these, he would have had to drive for 2 days with no sleep and then immediately do the killing.
Yeah.
He also was, there was a Japanese documentary, film crew or something, doing something on him. And he just randomly told them, yeah, I killed somebody.
He's I got some in your country too.
Yeah, I killed some in Japan, and they're and so after he had said that, he was questioned about that, and they're like, okay, well, where and how did you get there? And he said, I drove.
Yeah, I drove there, of course.
Yeah, so his IQ is not very high. I think it was.
I think he was very manipulative, but not very smart.
Yeah, I think he was just 10 points above mental retardation. I think I saw somebody who did some sort of evaluation on him. I believe that's what it is. So he was not very smart. So he didn't know things like this, but he was manipulative, and his memory was quite good, but he was not a very bright individual. So journalist Hugh Ainsworth.
Yeah, I think it's just Ainsworth.
I'm so sorry, Jesus Christ.
He's one of the guys who was in the documentary.
Is your anus worth? Okay, so others investigated the veracity of Lucas's claims for the articles that appeared in the Dallas Times-Herald. They calculated that Lucas would have had to use his 13-year-old Ford station wagon to cover 11,000 miles in 1 month to have committed the crimes police attributed to him.
I hope he had an oil change or
yeah,
two.
Jesus. After the After the story appeared in April 1985 and revealed the flawed methods of the Lucas Task Force, law enforcement opinion began to turn against the claims that the crimes had been solved. So the bulk of the Lucas report was devoted to the detailed timeline of Lucas's claim murders. The report compared Lucas's claims to be reliable, verifiable sources for his whereabouts. The results often contradicted his confessions and thus cast doubt on most of the crimes in which he was implicated.
Mm-hmm.
So Attorney General Jim Maddox wrote that when Lucas was confessing to hundreds of murders, those with custody of Lucas did nothing to bring an end to this hoax. And we have found information that would lead us to believe that some officials cleared cases just to get them off the books. End quote.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the documentary covers that information. So, yeah, I don't want to deeply get into it. If you want to watch the documentary, definitely do so. It's a huge clusterfuck.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, what had happened is the sheriff had all these cold cases, and he was up for re-election and was trying to clear them so he didn't have all these cold cases on his books.
Solved all these murders.
Yeah. And at one point, I don't have it in here, it is mentioned in the documentary, a lot of families didn't believe he actually had done it for the cases that, he had got credit for, and they fought it to try to reopen them. In some cases, successfully, but yeah.
I think there was some open protesting about it too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I don't know if this is mentioned later on, but it's mentioned in the documentary. So somebody tried within the police department, blew the whistle on this and said, hey, they're just trying to close these. There's corruption here. And that person, I don't remember his name, was then fired and then was suddenly charged and convicted with all these like conspiracy crimes. And do you remember what else?
No.
But it was all these like ridiculous crimes that he ended up like, would he get 25 years for it and then serve some time in prison before being acquitted retroactively and then suing either the Texas Rangers or the Texas Department of Justice or something like that, and got like $45 million for slander and for false imprisonment, all because he tried to blow this open from the inside.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how bad this was, but you'll see more of that in the documentary. If you don't want to watch the Netflix documentary, there's plenty of YouTube videos that do cover just that. All right. The death sentence.
So yeah, this is going to go into another large chunk. I didn't cover a lot of the suspected murder cases, but this was the big one because it had to do with his death sentence, so we'll get to that. So Lucas remained convicted of 11 homicides. He had been sentenced to death for one and then identified woman dubbed as Orange Socks, whose body was found in Williamson County, Texas on Halloween in 1979. Despite a timesheet recording his presence at work in Jacksonville, Florida, Lucas was granted a stay on his death sentence after it was discovered that details of his confession came from the case file, which he had been given to read. The sentence was commuted to life in prison in 1998 by then Governor George W. Bush.
You fucked up again, W. In 2019, Orange Socks was officially identified as Deborah Jackson, who was 23 years old at the time of her death.
And I know that a lot of people were really, really scared that he was going to be put to death for this because Texas has a pretty, straight reputation for just putting people to death very quickly. And they still do. They still kind of do.
Remember when we were doing that episode, we found out that they didn't have many... They only had lethal injection now.
Yeah, we thought that they had everything like firing squad and chair and everything, when really that's Florida. They're the ones who are kill happy.
Yeah, and then Oregon had firing squad or had hanging, and we were just like, what?
It was all this really absurd stuff. I think New Hampshire was another surprising one that had some weird stuff.
Yeah, so note to self: if I commit murders, do it in a place with firing squad, because that's how I'd want to go out. But yeah, so we have so much more information, and we're starting to get close to the 50-minute mark. I think most of this, because we could probably go for an hour and 45. So I think that this should go to part 2. So let's start to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I know next episode I want to touch on Orange Socks specifically, because that was the big case that led to his
death
penalty conviction that he was overturned.
Yeah, and all the stuff he was confessing to, it seemed to culminate with Orange Socks, and that's where this all blew up and just kind of ended. And we can talk about that, his portrayal in the media. If we get to Ottis Toole, we'll get to Ottis Toole. If not, that'll probably be a part 3.
Yeah.
But I expect there to be at least 3 parts on this.
Yeah, definitely. And, maybe next episode get into some of the shenanigans that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
While he was in jail.
Yeah, so y'all wanted 3-parters. We're bringing back 3-parters.
I honestly didn't think it was going to end up being like a 3-parter. I thought maybe, but maybe a 2-parter, but yeah.
Well, I thought it was going to be Henry Lee Lucas's 1 episode, Ottis Toole's 2nd episode, but we have way more information than that. So, okay, we'll end on this. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It helps so much. We're getting close to the 100 mark. I think we're at like 66, 67 subscribers last time I checked. If we hit 100 subscribers, I can now make a custom hyperlink for us, so we can be like youtube.com/themiserymachine, which would help so much with like plugging stuff. And my mic just fell. That sucked. Hopefully that was audible. So yeah, I want to create a custom hyperlink for us. 100 is like a great goal. Once we hit 1,000, like we can start getting ad revenue from YouTube, but every little subscribe helps us.
And comments, we really do like the comments.
The comments are helping us. Like I noticed now, because we didn't used to get any comments. If for those who've been listening for a while, like 4 or 5 months ago, we weren't like getting that many comments, and now we're getting so many comments, and it's really helping with the views because it's really boosting the algorithm. So if you want to leave us a comment, that's really awesome. If you want to like and subscribe on all your YouTube accounts, because everyone I seem to know seems to have multiple YouTube accounts, but it really goes a long way for us, and we really want to transform that YouTube channel into more than just an outlet for the podcast. We want to start doing videos of multiple things, and we want to do some like on-site stuff too, like maybe we can go places that are linked to true crime and do some like stuff like that. But
that would be really fun.
I really want to take this a step further. So yeah. Also, you want to check us out? Instagram, Misery Machine Podcast. That's probably where we're the most active. We do check our Twitter somewhat regularly. We will get to our Twitter messages after this. Misery_podcast. And I don't have the hyperlink for the Facebook group, but if you type in, what is it, Misery Machine Podcast
Community or something like that, you should be able to find it pretty easily.
Yeah, when you're on there, you can request different episodes from us and just interact with us a little bit better. But yeah, anything else?
That's all I really had.
Okay.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm hungry too, and I will pat us on the back. We have gone through this entire episode without talking about food.
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay. All right. Bye.